Um, we're all here because we're associated with the CFA Society in some way, where the charter holders are moving towards that. So I'm curious to hear your perspectives. How well is the CFA charter regarded in the world of mergers and acquisitions? And maybe we can talk a little bit about how do you leverage either holding the CFA charter or working towards it to give yourself a little bit of an edge over other people that are competing for the same job. Tim, can I ask you to jump in on that first?
Yeah, so I think I won't spend a lot of time talking about the world of M&A, but there's a lot in the world of M&A. Everything from financial modeling through, deal negotiation and integration and all. So there's a lot of factors on this. And I'm going to reserve these comments sort of for the financial end of this conversation, because I imagine that's the background that most of the people have on here. If we want to talk about other areas afterwards, I'd be more than happy to entertain those conversations. But I would say at a minimum, so the CFA, obviously, for anybody who's gone through the process, understands the rigor and the requirements to be able to do that. And it's going to reflect positively on your work ethic. Well, okay, that's an interesting, what do I mean by that? Well, typically a lot of the key jobs in M&A in the United States, and imagine around the world, are either coming out of investment banks or service providers, accounting firms, or corporates. All these are employers who are trying to determine, of the cast of the many people that want to get into M&A as a profession, who here has the intellectual and physical and stamina to be able to exist in this environment, which is absolutely not for everybody. And if you have had the ability and to show the discipline to complete the CFA, even one level of exam, the hiring people who are looking for jobs of people related to finance in this area are going to understand and look favorably upon the CFA the accreditation.
Thanks, Tim. Narciso, anything you might want to add to that?
Yeah, well, my current, I'm in charge of the corporate finance or M&A business unit here at the bank, Bank Financier, and one thing we are very obsessed when we present our organization is the quality of our people. So the responsibility of the areas here at the bank are all CFAs, and my bank nurtures and sponsors. So if people want to take that exam, the bank will pay for it, so it supports everyone that wants to carry out this challenge, because it's not, I don't think it's for everyone, as we know, right? 2 3 years of our life or more, it can depend. It's tough, so it shows commitment, and that's what we try to tell to our clients. Look, if you want the best technical, professional, ethical guys on your team, come to us, and that's it.
Yves, anything to add?
Yes, I would say, traditionally, the CFA charter has not been seen as a prerequisite for entry in M&A. But I think things may be evolving. The reason why it was not a prerequisite, in my view, is that, if you look at the investment banks, the analysts who start their career there, they tend to have a very, very heavy workload. I know some of the guys pulling sometimes north of 100 hours a week, and they didn't have time for joining a program like the CFA. Where I see, so from the traditional investment banking place, it was a nice to have, but not a prerequisite. Where I see things changing is, if we enlarge the pool to other categories, including Big Four, including a number of other firm operating there, well, we clearly see a lot of people having or willing to have the CFA charter while doing M&A. But, and I guess we'll come to that, it covers only one part of the skill set that is required to be a good M&A professional.
So Narciso, I want to start with you with this next question, and that is, how do the skills that you learn in the CFA program directly help somebody succeed in the M&A transaction world? What do you see that transfers over from the study of the program to professional success?
But I can speak up. I think my personal case, I think, is always nice, right? So and I think it gives you a good idea of, I think, what the CFA can bring and help. So I think I was really young when I started doing the CFA. I was back in 2001. So I had like 1 year experience, and I was needing something special, let's say, technical, high quality, knowledge. You are young, you're obsessed with knowledge. I'm a bit obsessed with knowledge, so I'm always searching for study. And I remember that it was really hard in a way. So 3 years of my life we're working on it, but it gave me the support, the technical support, the endurance, the planning, and all those capabilities that today in several meetings or in several deals, the technical part that we've seen in several of the topics of the CFA helped me in approaching some challenges. In a deal, sometimes you have the numbers, you have the accounting, you have the evaluation part, you have even special securities that need to be at fair value, these kind of things. So there's a lot of technical stuff that many times come to a deal and it needs to be tackled. And I think it was fantastic, So my career, it gave me a boost at the beginning of my career. At least my impression. Of course, it was new at the time, back into the early 2000s. So everything was fantastic. Reading these new knowledge of the CFA. But I think it explains who I am today. I think that's it.
Yves, how about you? How do you think that the CFA skills translate into the
Yes,
practical sense?
I think it's a critical question because, what do I look for when I'm seeking, for example, to recruit someone to work in the M&A space? Of course, the first prerequisite is a strong analytical mind, and that's where the CFA equips candidates typically with the right skill set there. But so I would see this as a necessary condition, but not sufficient. Because when you operate in M&A, you need to have the right character, business acumen. So you're looking for opportunities. You need to think strategically, and of course have the right level of integrity. But also you need to have the potential to turn into a good negotiator. So there's a kind of a poker type of mentality that is also baked into it. So not all, to cut a long story short, not all great analysts will turn into good M&A people. So it's a combination. So it's a question of how do you nurture these type of skills, and generally while doing deals, being at a corporate, being at a investment bank or any other party, that's something that you can also acquire over time, and be resilient.
Tim, anything to add?
Not much. I agree substantially with Yves. I mean, my business is M&A from beginning to end. So the idea of being a prerequisite but not a sufficient condition is it. It's exactly the case, and it's the ability to understand what you're doing and be able to think about it on multiple different levels, which is really where there's value. I guess I would say, again, to kind of paraphrase the other two said, it's an absolute indicator of somebody's ability, some raw financial and analytical capability, which is obviously good. And it also shows that ability to be able to knuckle down, work hard, persevere through multiple years of work, which is also a great indicator, but it's absolutely not a sufficient condition. That's not a predictor of success in M&A from toe to toe. It's just a great indicator that you've got some of what it takes to be good on the financial side.
Even though I'm the moderator, I would like to play panelist for just a second and add something and ask you to react to it in case you think I'm crazy. I think a very underrated source of value of the CFA program is you learn how to read academic finance papers. It's a different language, and if English is not your first language, you have so much sympathy from me, because those papers are hard if that's your native language. To do it if it's a foreign language, I think is a remarkable accomplishment. But in my world in valuation and transaction advisory, by understanding how to read those papers and kind of how to find them, it's given me tremendous advantage of in terms of understanding empirical trends in the marketplace that otherwise would not necessarily be accessible. I'm curious if you guys agree with that, disagree with it, or
I think you are right. Paying attention to to the number of papers that we've read at the time. I think you are totally right. It's probably I didn't pay attention. It's so many, but you need to be disciplined, and you need to be smart, right? In a way, you need to understand that it's technical stuff that many times is challenging, right? So I think you are right, Mike.
I would agree with what you said. I would add that, what is important in my view, as you grow in an M&A role, is the ability to speak in layman's terms. So understand the technique, but when you talk to a CEO, he doesn't want to be lectured about things, so it's really important to understand with a CEO or shareholder, what is at stake, and to bring yourself to the same wavelength. Of course, your background and your experience will be instrumental in doing that. But seeking to get to the right balance between your knowledge and how you use that knowledge, and when you use that knowledge in the conversation, because you don't want to steal the show. You are, especially if you are an intermediary, you are a facilitator to get a good deal for the party you work for.
I think I would only add in broadly that curiosity across the board is a benefit to the M&A world. And it's, obviously there's curiosity in building a model, financial curiosity, but there's curiosity in general, right? You can't represent a company well unless you know something about them. So you have to understand what's happening with that company. Yeah, you need to know something about who you're negotiating with. And generally, the concept of learning more for the sake of having more knowledge and being more curious will always serve you well to accomplish some of the things that Narciso and Yves just mentioned.
Thanks for that. So Yves, I would like to come back to you. From your perspective in Northern Europe, what's the job outlook in the M&A space right now?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because, if we look, M&A is part of the transformation, and we are, I think, gradually changing from a globalization environment that pushed towards specialization. A lot of industries to focus now to a set of different influences. You see the return of geopolitics. You have seen in the past couple of years that technology was changing also pretty dramatically the way some industries were operating. So a car manufacturer also now needs to deal a lot with the technology. So sometimes the sector focus that we used to see is still there, but in my view, the one who advise on deals, they need to be alert to the force that will shape the industries that they are working for, and that will likely be very different from what they are today. So the ability to project, to be innovative, to come probably outside of the box is in my view quite important.
Tim, how about you? You're sitting in Atlanta right now. What does the job outlook look like where you're sitting?
Here in the United States, as I'm sure you're all aware, it's painfully difficult right now to separate politics from business. So I'm hard pressed to say that something is going to happen or not happen. Let me just try to take politics out of it for one moment. Um, I still believe that M&A is an important part of the engine of growth for any economy. It's going to continue to happen. It's going to happen this year. It's just part of the way companies grow. And I think, in the United States in particular, there's a real sense that the way to grow in the US is through acquisition, particularly for smaller to mid-sized companies. There's a lot of interest in doing acquisitions, there's a lot of investment for M&A coming from private equity or otherwise, who all have an acquisition or a sale of a business out of it. So there's always going to be strong need for M&A professionals and activities and support for that industry here in the United States. The difference is, depending on what happens in politics, this could be an absolutely gangbusters year for M&A, or it could be a very depressed year for M&A, depending on what happens in the White House.
Now, Narciso, I'm very curious to hear your perspective because you don't sit in necessarily the biggest financial center.
No.
It's a great city, but let's face it,
Yeah.
it's not a big financial center. So what does the market look like from where you're sitting?
Look, that's my fight every day, right? So my bank, let's say, I think one of the advantages it has is very obsessed with cross-border, and so we are a small country, so we cannot be, let's say, hostage of the internal markets. We are 10 million guys, so we need, we need more. So the internal market, we work very well. We know everyone. Let's say all the private equities in the big companies and these kind of things. So we need to be, let's say, highly involved and highly aware of things. But I think the success is when you have a unique asset here in Portugal is being able to find the right investor that many times comes from other countries. So that's why we are very obsessed in cross-border deals. My bank has offices outside Portugal and we travel a lot. So one of the things that Tim told is that planes, oh, that's life. Cars, that's life. We are always jumping around and we start the day with an agenda. We end the day with, I don't know what's the agenda. So in terms of future, look, I think we just, we are going to have a new election. So there's a instability also here in Portugal. And so I think we are a bit cautious, let's be fair. And many of the decisions were already taking some time because we had a reduction on the M&A volumes here in Portugal. And now with this change politically, I think there are some decisions that will take 2 or 3 months. So we are a bit cautious on that part, but of course, there's still things to be done. Huh? We need to fight every day to find deals, right?
So, Tim, I want to start with you for the next question. A lot of the people on this call are certainly interested in finding career opportunities in M&A. It's why we're here. What do you think the first step or two should be for somebody that wants to pursue that as a goal?
Well, so again, I think, in my world, M&A covers a lot of different things. So from beginning to end. So again, I'll try to constrain this sort of to the financial side. And even then, I suspect my colleagues on the line will have a better insight into it than I do. But, first of all, there are plenty of ways into M&A. In my mind, there's 3 main ways you get in. One is on the corporate side, like I did. So coming through a company where you're going to be, you're working on M&A on the corporate side. Part of that is identifying yourself within the company. So if you're in a company and you want to work in the M&A side, part of it is identifying yourself to those that are doing the M&A that's probably aligned underneath the CFO and making some moves to head in that direction. And of course, I could talk about that more later on because I probably know more about that than the other two routes. The second main route is through the investment banker channel. And I think as Yves mentioned, that's a very competitive route to going through. They recruit analysts right out of undergraduate university and again out of an MBA programs. But that's not the only place they recruit them from. You can work your way through to investment banks coming through other angles, especially if you have particular skill that's relevant to the to an M&A transactions. And the third group is what I would call the service providers, whether they're consultants or accountants or others who are actively working on that on transactions. That path might look more normal for someone who's got, for an example, an accounting background through a larger accounting firm and then making it known within the accounting firm that that's an area that usually is called transaction advisory or something along those lines, and looking for opportunities to move into those groups in that way. That's my shorthand, but I certainly defer on the financial side to my colleagues.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Narciso, how about what do you think?
I think it's pretty similar to Tim. I think it's really equal. You know, the Portuguese market had a nice evolution along the way. You know, we lack some financial markets, but we follow, let's say, the trend. It takes more time. And there was a time there was no companies with M&A or corporate development. Now it's the new. Well, it's not a new characteristic. It happens, and there is. But now there's a new thing in town, which is the family offices. You know, let's say, wealthy groups, wealthy families that have their beer business or coffee, whatever, and now they have large chunks of money and they want to invest in other things, and they hire people. And they start to have their own small teams doing M&A. So it's also a source of recruiting, if that's happening, at least in Portugal. It's a new thing that is happening at the moment.
And I think that's Yves, I'm going to come to you in a second, but I just want to add to that. My sense is one of the things I'm learning in Europe is that family offices kind of fill the gap that might ordinarily be filled by private equity. In the United States, we're a very heavily private equity economy. My sense is that in Portugal and in Europe more broadly, family offices are filling a lot of that capital right now.
You're right. No, you're totally right. For us, Portugal is a new thing. It's now when you start selling a business, they have their own space in our bidders list, let's say, right? They deserve that place already. There was a time there's nothing to be filled, and now there are a lot of names. So yeah, for us, it's good news, right? More investors, more clients, and more people, let's say.
Yves, what advice do you give for
Yes, I'm going probably to share my experience, bifurcating into M&A after, a number of years of experience, with my former company, after 12 years in the business, focusing and growing a valuation practice that grew to become, dominant on the marketplace. I was really interested in launching an M&A activity, and that's hard. That's hard. You need really the right level of coaching. I was very fortunate at that time to get the coaching from a very seasoned UK-based investment banker who was part of a group. Getting coached into having the right reflects the right approach, and I think it's if I look at the environment right now, the value of onboarding people with experience will grow because we are going to look for more diversity in terms of the set of experiences. Technology we see is growing dramatically. I spoke to a private equity the other day who told me that now, for example, for the due diligence with the AI, they get a lot more out of the thing compared to the big book due diligence that were kind of serving as door stoppers and not really very much read by the deals professionals. So we see a lot of the dynamic in the M&A. I think what is very interesting is that unlike many other professions that are going to be vastly impacted by AI, M&A is still a negotiation driven, where the human side will still be predominant. So I don't see the profession being, impacted as much as others where the number crunching can be largely automated. But how you work, how you leverage the AI into the equation and the upcoming trends is really something where people need to continue to adapt, even the most experienced professional in the market.
Yves, I'm really glad you brought that up. So I'm gonna get off the script for a second because I think that's an issue that's too big to ignore. So Tim, I'm gonna put you on the spot here right away, and that is AI gonna take the jobs of some of the people on this call?
Ooh, I've thought about that a lot. I've spent a lot of time listening to a lot of opinions on that. I think probably when I get to the end of it, it's going to sound a lot like what Yves was saying. I fundamentally believe that the world of M&A is not something that's going to be changed to the top level that much by AI. The real skill, capability, and success factors in M&A are driven by experience, the ability to react to unknown things, the ability to perhaps take factors that are unrelated and be able to come to a better way of doing it. And then certainly there's the whole human part of negotiating and integrating and all that sort of thing. So the short answer is for many of the people on this call, I'm not sure it will take their jobs. There's a big however, and I think this is true across every industry, not just M&A, is that a lot of the simple tasks where I say simple, where younger people learned how to do these things are going to be automated away. So for example, in my business, we're using AI for PowerPoints. Why? Because I don't like creating PowerPoints. It takes a long time. But how did I learn how deals worked and how things got done? Is I was a junior guy who worked on PowerPoints. I worked on financial models and I learned by doing and making mistakes. So I think if there's anywhere that AI is going to put downward pressure on jobs, it's going to be on the more junior people doing the repetitive tasks that we all who are on the call right now needed to do in order to fill out our ability to understand, our ability to ask questions, our ability to connect up some of the whys to what we were just doing. So I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion. I just don't think AI is going to revolutionize M&A. I do think, though, that it's going to, like every industry, put downward pressure on some of the more entry-level jobs.
Narciso, anything to add? Or are we going to be replaced by ChatGPT?
No, but I use it.
Me too.
I think the skill is going to be using ChatGPT, right? That's
yeah.
the skill that people are going to have to know.
Yeah, I think everyone is curious. Everyone now uses it. No, there was a time there was curiosity. Now I think we are going to use it. Now we are seeing the value, and we are trying to incorporate. And we see that in companies. So there's a lot of I don't know if it's VCs or company or startups that are looking at this, and on the legal part, on the fintech part. So I've heard there's a startup that does. I think there's teams in the UK that do, NDAs. You put the NDA, it does a markup immediately. You send it. It's much more, let's say fast and furious, the move, right? So not to lose time with this kind of stuff. So let's take to our advantage, right? So probably the kids or the young people, the analysts, in a good way, have more time to learn more about other things, which is I think the most important part. It's to start go to meetings, to hear things, to start creating a network of contacts, which is probably one of the things that is really important in this area, is to create your own contacts along your experience, because they will be very useful. You don't know when, many times, but they will be very useful in due time.
Now, we started on this path with, the ways to find career opportunities. And it's very interesting because the three of you all gave an answer that had something to do with moving into M&A either by being recruited directly from university or by starting in an adjacent or nearby field and then moving over into M&A, as well as building on the technical expertise. But one piece I want to cover here is, what about the importance of building a network? I think a lot of CFA charter holders, and I'm one of them, we tend to be analysts, and therefore I think we tend to be introverted because we think that the numbers are going to speak for us. I'm not sure that's the case when it comes to trying to build a career like this, especially because, as Yves said, deal making is so important. The human element of deal making is so important at the highest levels. So what I'd like to do is ask you to comment on, is it enough just to be a great technician, or are there other things you have to do to start to build contacts and network of your own to make sure that you have eyes on those opportunities?
Yeah, I like that question because building a network is essential to be successful in M&A. But the approach of doing it is a lot different from a number of the other technical fields. To be really successful in M&A, you need to have a top-down approach. So think strategically. Where does the power flow? If you work on cross-border deals, you need to go and talk to the folks who can, have a significant influence or be ideally the key decision makers. So it means that in terms of growing, the M&A actually helps you grow from that perspective, because that gives you the right habits to talk at the right level, instead of, what I tend to see sometimes at mid-level people trying to have an approach bottom up, creeping up the ranks. No, the right approach is to is to go straight to the source of power. So building your network, and it's not something that is done day one from day two. It's something that you learn through experience, because you necessarily make mistakes along the way. And how you communicate, how you avoid being too technical, because if a killer, in my view, is to try to impress your audience with your knowledge. No, you're there to facilitate the deals, but building a network is critical from that perspective.
Tim?
Yeah, again, so first of all, I agree. Building a network is necessary for everyone, for a whole bunch of reasons. I think, I would expand on what Yves said, that, it's also important for you to understand what happens outside of whatever it is you're working on. So if you're a skilled technical person, you need to understand what is going to be the output of your skilled technological work. Let's assume it's 100% correct and you've been perfect in your execute. What's going to happen with that? How is that going to make its way into the negotiation? How is that going to make its way into the company's forecast? How is that going to make its way into the integration? How are the work that you're doing going to impact this whole process, which is not just one little piece? So for me, I always spent a lot of time trying to understand as much as I could about what are the lawyers doing, right? Well, I always try to figure out what did I need to know about what is the sales guys doing? What do I need to know about what's going to happen on the integration? And by building that network, I guess it's not only vertical but horizontal, has made me a much better M&A practitioner, because now if I'm building that financial model, I understand what it means if I put in an assumption that someone's got to actually do whatever I'm assuming they're going to do. It's not just simple, here, I'm going to grow this by 10%. You have to understand how that's going to work. So it's not a direct comment to networking per se, but it's more of a comment that says it's difficult to be agreeing with Yves, it's very difficult to be successful if you're a master of one very slice, complicated though it may be. It's difficult to have a successful career and grow in your career if you really stay just inside that one little slice.
Thanks, Tim. Narciso, importance of networking in this career.
It's my experience, it's huge. So I started very technical, very I started by my career. So I think gave me the strong knowledge that I have today in several meetings and several aspects. But along the way, what I've noticed is that you need to interact into, I need to leave the office. I need to speak with lawyers. I need to speak with friends. I need to visit companies. And today my phone has so many numbers or I know so many things that help me originate deals many times, So I think that if there is a company in Portugal, above 2 million euros EBITDA, in principle, I will know something. If I don't know, I will know someone that will know something. But I have the obsession of at least to visit the owners. And if it's a good company, for sure, I have to pay a visit to them. So we are very, proactive, reaching out to people. And because it takes one of the challenges of this area is that you many times start one conversation with the ambition of getting a sell-side mandate or whatever, so to sell a company. And this can take years or never happens, right? So you speak with the owners and the families, and you go there, and they just pass by, and have the high hair is coming, and but when that day happens, you need to be there. So you need that the family remembers you, that you have been there for many years. Of course, you'll have competition. That's also a thing that we have, right? We are not alone. So people got proposals, right? They asked several banks or several boutiques or several, big fours. So that's also a thing that everyone's fighting for the same cheese, let's say, right? Everyone wants to get the sell side manager. So I think that's my 25 years doing this, and I start to notice that all the efforts are paying it, all these years on the ground and building this at least this context. In Portugal, it's a bit like this.
So I'm going to do one more question and then pause for questions from our audience here. And I know we've already got one in the chat. But the last question I do want to do formally, and I think this will be interesting to people, is, when you do have an opportunity to add somebody to your team, what are the one or two most important things that you look for? And let's put aside the technical part, because we've already talked about that. I don't think we need to cover that anymore. We all know you're not going to hire somebody that can't do the technical job. So putting that aside, what are the 1 to 2 or 3 things that make you really excited about a particular candidate? So Tim, let me go to you first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, again, I think, keeping in mind my business is end-to-end M&A, really what I would be looking for is curiosity, right? Somebody, it's similar to my comments before, somebody who wants to understand why. Why is this happening? How is this happening? They want to know more. They want to know more about the client. They want to know more about the buyer or the seller. They just want to understand what is happening. And somebody that has expressed curiosity and has some history of trying to understand the whole thing or parts of it they don't know, that's extremely valuable to me, because I don't need to babysit them as much as I would as somebody who is very functional, like I'm very good at A, B, or C, which has its role. But for my 2 cents, I'd rather have somebody who really wants to know why. Why is that the case? Not to the extent of stopping work. Obviously, work's got to get done, but they're curious about how the business works and what's the process and why we're doing it. That's valuable to me.
Yves, how about you?
Yeah, as I said at the outset, I think what is critical is the character. Do people have the character to do this? M&A is hard. It's a very rewarding. It's one of the best experience I've had. When you close a $500 million deal, high stake, that's something, and till the very last minute, that deal could have fallen through. So the character, I think we need to be mindful about the diversity, because there's tendency also to think alike, and that's also something that needs to be well balanced. But there is another aspect, is I think the cross-border collaboration. So outside a bit of the classical organization through groups, through firms, how do you network to co-create values with people from other geographies, where you can have interesting discussions to source new opportunities sometimes, and sometimes the most interesting are the ones that are simply not on the radar. No one thought about it because they were in a kind of a silo mentality. So breaking the silos to create value, especially at that level, I think it's a very rewarding experience. So it's not just a question about the individual character, it's also how you organize to create value across the board.
Narciso, how about you?
For me, it's reliable, because you don't have an agenda, and you don't need to speak much when the people is reliable. You know that the analyst will not fail. You know that he reads between the lines that you are stressed and you need help. It's this small stuff that's really important in the end as a team. Of course, when we are hiring, we don't know if it's going to be like that. It's a jump of faith sometimes, right? You give some interviews, you approach the analytical part, but I think you got to start to have a sense in the first days and weeks that if this guy is going to be a nice hiring. So for me, it's reliable and being very proactive. Always ask, never leaving the office without asking if there's anything more that can be made, or if it can help in any way. And of course, what we try to do is to pay them back, right? So if you help me, for sure, if you have a distress or whatever, you need to leave early, we'll try to honor that also, right? So it's a give also, and it's needed. So small teams need to work well. We don't have a huge team. It's at least in Portugal, it's normal. So if there's a weak link, it's a question of time that it will be noticed. So that's it.
I would add for myself one other feature too, and this touches a little bit on what Yves said, but I think it's different enough that it's worth taking a minute to talk about, and that is what I call mental toughness. The M&A world is going to throw a lot of surprises at you, and as Yves said, a deal can fall apart on the last day. Deals can fall apart even after they've been signed, and when things happen, there are a lot of people who are upset because there are millions of dollars in the line, or maybe billions of dollars in the line, and you can't get caught up in the panic. You have to be part of the stability. You can't add to the chaos. And if you're young, you also have to understand, and your bosses will understand, that you're not going to be very good at your job initially. M&A is a skill set that is not really taught in school. You can't read a book about it. You have to learn it by doing it, and you learn it by screwing it up and learning what not to do and not doing that again. Not everybody works well on that. That if they, it can be hard to kind of fail for a year or two and not realize that that's part of the learning process.
Hey, Mike, can I add one more thing? And I think it's kind of relevant to the CFA world. I mean, it's sort of about CFA in general. One of the things I value about the CFA is the code of ethics. And I think, one of the hardest things for us to do in the M&A world is understand whether our counterparts or ourselves are acting ethically. It's always a challenge. And so one of the reasons I've always been proud of my CFA, and it's frankly one of the most valuable things I think about it in a broad sense, is having that code of ethics to do the right thing. And in deal making, it's hard to tell who's a snake and who's not, and there's lots of snakes. So for me, if you've done the charter, you've got the CFA, that code of ethics means something to me for sure. So I would, it's very important, again, in the whole process of the M&A profiles, having somebody who's ethical that you can work with.
All right, so we've got 5 minutes left. We have a couple questions in chat. One comment really, and I'm not sure if that's a question or if it's rhetorical, but the first one I'm going to modify a little bit because it's not overly relevant to what we're talking about, but I do want to respect the question. And so, very briefly, do you see at some point there being an M&A specific AI platform becoming available that's gonna be a part of the M&A workflow?
I would say definitely through the due diligence process. We see also data room vendors, equipping, participants with analytics, especially this on the seller side. So, for a number of years, you've been able to really see through the data room whether a party is serious or not in terms of exploring, the documentation. They are investing time with resources, with the right level of external parties. But I think with AI, we are going to go to another dimension that will complement and provide even more value to the M&A professionals. So how M&A professionals can leverage that to their advantages and to the advantage of their client or to their own firm if they work at the corporate is going to be quite critical. But, are we going to see a process that is automatized, from an M&A standpoint? I'm more skeptical on that because, how can a deal fail? Sometimes it's related to the human element, and so it's not just about following a process A to Z.
So we only have a couple minutes left, so I think we need to wrap up here. Pedro, do you have any questions on your end that somebody sent you, or are we clear?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. So with the time we have left, I'd like to give everybody one opportunity then for a final comment, maybe something that you wanted to get in, but didn't. One last thing you want to leave everybody with before we wrap up for the day.
Well, my recommendation, if you got in, this is a personal also experiences. I got lucky in a way, in my professional experience, that when I noticed that there was senior guys that really knew about things, I would try to work with them hard. I would try to get to be on the same team that those guys. So at the start of my career, I think that I was lucky. So I was lucky that I found people that wanted to teach me also. And but I had to fight my for that, right? So the more I worked, the more they wanted to give me more work. So it was, at the beginning it was important. So I think that's it's relevant for me, really relevant.
Tim or Yves, any parting or last thoughts?
I would say, it's sort of probably why we're having this, this topic at all. Coming through the corporate side, there's literally no more fun job that you're going to do than M&A. You really learn about your company, you learn about other things. It's a high profile job. And so, everybody wants to work on M&A when you're in the corporate side, notwithstanding complaining about the extra work. Everybody loves it. And it's a great place to be. And if you've got your ears open and you've got your mind open, you're going to learn so much about the business that you're working on. You won't believe a year in how much you've learned. Sometimes it's by force. Sometimes you have to come up to speed on something like in a week that you didn't know about. But you're going to learn a ton, and that's going to help you just understand how business works, whether it's M&A or not.
Thanks, Tim. Yves?
Yeah, I would say it's a golden age for experienced business professionals, to thrive in this market. If you are an entrepreneur and you know how to leverage on the technology and on your network, it's a fantastic time. And of course, M&A is going to stay. There will be ups and downs in the cycles, but it's a very it's in a business life, it's really something that provides you with a lot of intellectual satisfaction.
All right, well, we got a last second question, but I think it's directed specifically at Narciso. So Narciso, maybe you could stay on and
Yeah,
communicate
sure.
with him directly.
Hi, Sebastião.
But in the meantime, as we wrap up, I'd like to thank our panelists, Tim, Yves, and Narciso for joining us from, I think, 3 different time zones today. And I think it gave everybody a nice broad perspective across multiple markets about the M&A world. I think you heard a little bit about work cultures as well. I think you got some different perspectives. Pedro, thank you for having the CFA Society of Portugal sponsor this event and for giving me the opportunity to be a participant. And hope a lot of these
Pleasure.
people will come back for our future programs.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure. I think it was another amazing event. I appreciate all everything that you said, the 4 of you. And so thank you so much. We will close the session. We will come next month on the 29th of April, and the profession will be credit analyst. So thank you so much. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you.